Hello learners, welcome to online course on gender sensitization, society, culture and change. Today we will be discussing BGSC 001 Block 2 Unit 5. The title of this particular unit is Family, Love and Power. Let us first discuss what is family. Family is the basic unit of a society. It is also an institution that is considered as the seat of nurturing, care and socialization of an individual. It is also supposed to be an institution that protects a person from the evils and threats of outside world. So when we talk about family, family is called the first phase of socialization, or it is the first stage of socialization of an individual. It is from the family that a child learns the habits, the values, and it is the family which nurtures the child to be a good citizen of the society. So family is the basic unit of a society, and it is the place where there is a lot of love given by the parents, as well as there is a lot of authoritarian power which is in the hands of the parents, which means that in the family, the parents have the authority, they have the power to punish the child if he or she does not obey the rules of the family. So, in a family, there is what you call love, as well as there is what is called authority in the form of power which is exercised by the parents. So, this is what we are going to deal with, family, love and power. There are various theories with regard to what a family is. Let me discuss it one by one. First of all, we will discuss what is functionalism theory of family. How do functionalists define theory of family? Functionalism states that family forms the basic institution of every society and is universal in nature. Through its various functions, family meets the functional prerequisites of the society and helps maintain its equilibrium. So this is the functionalist theory of family. This theory is based on the understanding that the biological imperatives of motherhood predispose women for indoor work, whereas the greater physical strength of men leads them naturally into the provider role. So when we talk about the functionalist theory of family, one can say this particular theory is the traditional theory of family, which means that it is the men who will go out to to earn the livelihood, and it is the women who stay at home for indoor work, and it is the women who would look after the children, it is the women who would take care of the children, it is the women who would cook and would cook for the family. So this is the traditional notion of what a family is according to the functionalists, where the men will go out to do the work, earn for the family, and women will be staying home as well as caring for the children, cooking for the family. So this is basically what is meant by the functionalist theory of family. Talcott Parsons is the most prominent proponent of functionalist theory, and his ideas finds an elaboration in his famous work, Social System. In his work, Social System, according to Parsons, family is the basic agent of socialization, and every member of the society derives their role and status from the position in the family. So this is what Talcott Parsons says. He is a functionalist, and he says that family is the basic agent of socialization, and that every member of the society derives their role and status from the position in the family. So what is this role and status of the members of the family? Like I just discussed before, it is the men who go out to earn the livelihood for the family, and it is the women who stay at home, they cook for the family and they look after the children. So this is what is meant by the functionalist theory, and this is a very prominent proponent of functionalist theory, who is Talcott Parsons. To add on to the functionalists say that the question of distribution of power among members of the family is presented as a voluntary acceptance of hierarchy, with the male head, that is the husband, enjoying power, and the female, and that is the wife, accepting it without any conflict. Is the theory of functionalism. They say that in the family, the members of the family accept the position, they accept the role and status as it is expected by the society. That is, they accept the hierarchy where the male is the head of the family. The male in this sense is the husband who enjoy power, and the female, that is the wife, who accepts the hierarchy. That is, the wife accepts the authority of the husband, the children accept the authority of their father without any conflict. So this is the main theme of what functionalism is all about. That is with regard to the theory of family, with regard to functionalism. On the other hand, radical feminists emphasize on sexual rather than economic exploitation. So when we talk about radical feminists, they are completely opposite to what the functionalists believe in the theory of family. They link women's oppression to their sexual and reproductive role performed basically within the family. They call upon women to reject their biological reproductive role and take the help of technology to subvert male domination. So what radical feminists emphasize is, they say that because women bear children, they are the one who produce children, they are the one who perform reproductive role within the family, which is why this leads to their suppression. So the radical feminists, they say that they should, the women should reject the biological reproductive role and take the help of technology to suppress male domination. This is completely an opposite of what the functionalists believe in. And there is another theory or critique of family, that is your Dalit Bahujan critique, which took Indian feminists to task for the seemingly invisibility of caste inequality and emphasize on the politics of difference. What Dalit Bahujan feminists argue is that this difference is essential for understanding the Dalits' subjugation, characterized by two patriarchal structures, which are patriarchy that stigmatized Dalit women because of their caste status, and intimate forms of control by Dalit men over the sexual and economic Brahminical form of labor of their women. Let me go back to the previous slides. We have talked about the functionalist theory of family. Then we talked about the radical feminist take on family. Then we have the Dalit Bahujan critique. Who are the Dalit Bahujan? The Dalit Bahujans are the lower caste of the Indian society, and they say that they critique Indian feminists to task for saying that there is an invisibility of caste inequality, and they emphasize on the politics of difference. And they say, why should we stress on difference? They say that we should stress on difference because it is essential for understanding the Dalits' women's subjugation. Then moving on, after talking about the various theories of family given by the functionalists, the radical feminists, feminist studies critique functionalism, bringing forth the various ways in which power operates within family, leading to hierarchy, discrimination and violence against various members. They show family as not just a space of love, peace and cooperation, but also of conflict, violence and negotiation. So what is the feminist studies critique of functionalism? What do feminists say about functionalism? What they say is, the feminists, what they say is, family is not just a space of love, peace and cooperation, but also of conflict, violence and negotiation. Let me just refresh your memory, dear learners. When I began, I told you, I discussed what functionalists talked about the family. They had said that family is a place where the authority, the hierarchy is accepted by the family members. There is peace, cooperation and love. The male members' authority is accepted by the wife, the female members and the children of the family. But the feminists, they say that family is not always a space of love, peace and cooperation, but also of conflict, violence and negotiation. There is another critique which question Indian feminists, that is the queer critique. The queer critique, they question Indian feminists' negligence of the role sexuality play in determining family form and the unequal distribution of power within. They argue against feminist non-question of heteronormativity. What is heteronormativity? When we talk about this particular concept, when we talk about heteronormativity, this is a concept. This says that the relationship between the opposite sex is the normal mode of sexual orientation. It assumes that sexual and marital relations are mostly fitting between people of opposite sex. So they say that they say and they question these basic concept of heteronormativity, saying that why should this be the only accepted normal mode of sexual orientation? Why should there be an assumption that sexual and marital relations are most fitting between people of the opposite sex? So this is the queer critique. And according to the queer critiques, feminists question gender roles, subordination of women, violence against women, unequal rights to property, decision making and others within family. So this is where they question the very role of gender roles, subordination of women, violence against women, unequal rights to property and decision making and others within family. They say that they argue that why should women be subordinated? Why should roles be played? Why should there be stereotypical gender roles, that is men going out of the house to earn livelihood, women staying at home, looking after the children, cooking? Why should there be subordination of women? Why should violence take place against women? Why should there be rights to property in terms of property given only to the male members of the family? So this is another critique of the family, that is the feminist questioning gender roles. Then let us move on to domestic violence. What is domestic violence? Before we move on to various issues to deal with domestic violence, let me point out some basic points about domestic violence. Domestic violence, also known as domestic abuse, is a violence or other abuse in a domestic setting such as in marriage or cohabitation. Domestic violence is often used as a synonym for intimate partner violence, which is committed by a spouse or partner in an intimate relationship against the other spouse or partner, and can take place in heterosexual or same-sex relationships or between former spouses or partners. In its broadest sense, domestic violence also involves violence against children, parents or the elderly. It takes number of forms including physical, verbal, emotional, economic, religious, reproductive and sexual abuse, which can range from subtle, coercive forms to marital rape and to violent physical abuse such as choking, beating, female genital mutilation and acid throwing that results in disfigurement or death. So this is what domestic violence is. And usually in domestic settings such as in marriage or cohabitation, according to figures, it is usually the male, it is usually the husband who indulge in domestic violence, majority of the cases are domestic violence or domestic abuse, which is done by the male members, that is the husbands towards the female members, towards the wives. So this is what domestic violence is all about. If you remember the title of the topic which we are dealing with today, love, family, love and power. This is where the very basic issue of power comes in, that is domestic violence. Men or the husbands of the family, to assert the authority, at times they indulge in what is called physical violence, that is domestic violence, domestic abuse. This is how they show their dominance. So let us discuss what domestic violence is all about. What are the various types and issues or forms in domestic violence? How does domestic violence takes place? First of all, domestic violence takes place because there is unequal access to facilities and resources. The dominant ideology assumes that girls are inferior, physically and mentally weak, and above all sexually vulnerable. Based on this, discrimination and restrictions are imposed upon the girl child. If we see in our society today, in Indian society today, even today, males, sons are very much appreciated compared to a girl child. So this leads to unequal access to facilities and resources. In a family where you have both girls and boys, the parents will prefer to educate their sons more than the girls, though it may not happen in all families. At times in many families this is the case, where the sons are given, they are given more opportunity for education. Distribution of basic resources within the family is regulated along the factors of gender and age. These basic resources include nutrition, health care, education, other material assets, as well as parental attention and care. A family is a place where, in terms of the Indian society, which is still very patriarchal, we see that nutrition, healthcare, education, and other material assets are usually passed on to the males, the sons, and in a number of cases, you have better nutrition, better health care, education given to the male members of the family, saying that, females saying or not giving much care compared to the male. With regard to males, female are at times neglected in families in terms of resources, nutrition, healthcare, education, and other material assets. Child abuse. In child abuse, this means children are victims of substantial abuse of a physical, psychological, and emotional nature. This includes sexual aggression, beatings, as well as extracting hours of labor from children who should be in school or at play. Sexual harassment. Sexual harassment also occurs in the domestic sphere. Unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature constitutes sexual harassment. Sexual harassment forms one of the basic tools of men to keep women in their patriarchally defined space. So this is what power is all about when you talk about domestic violence. Sexual harassment is one of the basic tools of men to keep women in their patriarchally defined space. Men, most of the times, they indulge in domestic violence to subjugate women. They try to control women in terms of domestic violence. They would it could be in the form of beatings, it could be in the form of physical abuse, emotional abuse, or at times, throwing acids on the face and so on. So sexual harassment occurs a lot of time in the domestic sphere because this is where men would exercise their power, they would exercise the authority over the women to control women, and with regard to portraying the dominance against women. Then rape or sexual assault is broadly defined as non-consensual sexual act through the use of physical force, threats, or intimidation, including the rape of a woman by a husband, which is marital rape. Rape may also occur between people who know each other and between people who have previously had consensual sexual relations. So this is also another form of dominance of men who would show the dominance through sexual assault or through rape. This is where they try to exercise their power in this form. Then also violence against aged persons and widows. A situation of dependency on the younger generation results in neglect and in some cases ill treatment and different forms of violence against older people, in particularly women, widows, and aged persons are usually economically dependent upon their relatives. So when we talk about domestic violence, other than the violence between the spouses, we have violence against, which is committed against persons and widows. We see a lot of times in a domestic setting where elderly people, where the widows are abused by the family members, the elderly parents, the old elderly people are abused by their old children, by their own children. So this is also another form of domestic violence, which is violence against aged persons and widows. Therefore, these widows, these elderly persons are more vulnerable to violence by the family members, who include in-laws, sons, daughter-in-laws, and other relatives. Then also, when we talk about violence, we cannot not talk about violence and discrimination against the LGBTQ members. What is the full form of LGBTQ? Let me refresh your memory. It means lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer members. There are a lot of times when violence and discrimination takes place against the LGBTQ members, and because the idea of family is based on heteronormativity, where I explain the very concept of heteronormativity is where the accepted normal mode of sexual orientation is the relationship between the opposite sex. So a lot of times when there is deviation from such norms, it leads to discrimination and violence. So when people deviate from what is the accepted norms of sexual orientation, which is the relationship, the accepted norms of relationship is between the opposite sex. So when people, that is the LGBTQ members, deviate from such norms, that is heteronormativity, then a lot of discrimination and violence takes place against them. And traditionally, children born as transsexual, called as hijras, are abandoned by the family or killed in the form of infanticide. And a lot of times when children come out as gay in front of their family members, a lot of times they are disowned by the family, and violence and discrimination takes place against this particular LGBTQ members. So when we talk about domestic violence, we have talked about domestic violence in the family setting, violence against the, especially in majority of cases, violence against the female members by the male members, and domestic violence is a way of asserting your authority, a way of asserting your power, which is usually done by the male members of the family. Then we talked about domestic violence and discrimination against the LGBTQ members, against the aged members of the family, against the widows. So dear learners, today In this particular topic, we discuss what love, family and power is all about. We talked about family in context to the various theories, which is functionalist theories. We talked about the radical feminist take on family. We talked about the queer critique. We talked about the Dalit Bahujan critique. Then we also talked about the various, the concept of how power and authority is dealt within the domestic setting, as well as how this particular concept of power can be seen in the family. So with this particular topic on family, love and power, I end this topic. Thank you so much.